I quit my job after telling off a 4-year-old for shaking his cup at me. What's the dumbest thing that has set you off at work? I was a lifeguard for an uppity condo association when I was in college. Every day I had to deal with this typically rich, spoiled, entitled brat of a 12-year-old boy. The last straw occurred during finals. I had very little sleep. My car was freaking up and I had 2 tough tests that day that drained me even further. I was sitting in my chair watching the pool and the brat walked up to me carrying my keys with a pair of barbecue tongs. "Hey, I found your keys." Now, my keys were attached to a metal 2 fingers tequila rectangle thingy. So, not thinking things through, I open my hand and he drops the keys into them. It took about 2 seconds before I realized they were red hot. The little sucker had let them sit in the hot coals of a grill for a while before picking them up with the tongs and bringing them to me. The smirk on his face was begging me to throttle him. I came very close to knocking the crap out of him, but at least had the clarity to know what would happen if I did. I closed the pool and went to the condo association office to let them know I would not work if this kid was allowed in the pool from then on. I was fired on the spot. Who'd have filed a police report. My girlfriend worked at a grocery store in the produce section for a few years. She was stocking the bananas and a customer came up to her, grabbed a bunch of bananas, held it up and said rather sharply, "These bananas are green." To which she clapped her hands and said, "Very good." Got fired. I am the only male worker in my workforce in retail. It was a very busy day and the store was moving and I had to keep on top of things. I get this very annoyed woman coming up to me yelling at me to hurry when I asked how her day was. She had returned a crap load of things. Our return policy is we can only give money back in the form it was paid for. I told her I just couldn't give her cash back. I am a pune and not a manger, so I could not override the system to give cash back. She kept saying she wanted cash back and nothing else. I explained to her our whole return policy without ever losing my temper. She then demands to see my manager, who is female. My manager says the exact same thing I said. The woman was like, "Oh, okay, I understand." So then my manager was giving her money back on her card she paid with. Then the woman was like, "That's what you get for hiring unintelligent men." I had been there 9 months. My boss suddenly stopped doing the transaction, cancelled it, and said, "Have a nice day." The woman was like, "What about my money?" My boss was like, "Too bad. This man was doing everything right. Now get out of my store." What a boss. I am a manager and had a guy refuse to talk to me because I am female and he didn't want a woman assisting him. I told him he could sit his butt in the lobby until a man showed up, which was a few days later. Then all my male co-workers refused to help him. I've gotten something similar. I am a male employee at Hallmark and we sell Vera Bradley. So men or women come in and are like, "You're a guy. You don't know anything about Vera Bradley. Grab me one of the girls." B. I have the entire Vera Bradley catalog memorized. I'm an Asian guy working in the electronics department of a retail store. One day some kids, 13-14-year-olds, walked by me and said, "Hey, what's up, Jackie Chan?" I told them to go frick themselves and that they were white cracker pieces of crap. They ran and told their parents, who then reported it to my manager. Luckily the manager just laughed at the situation and told me to carry on. Good move by your manager. I wouldn't fire Jackie Chan either. He could frick crap up. He'd use an LCD TV as a weapon or something. So I used to work full time for an electronics retailer. Spoiler alert, it was Best Buy, where I sold TVs. I honestly didn't mind most people. Even when customers would get pee off, I would find myself just kind of smiling inside at how seriously people take such little things. The one thing that did pee me off was when a guy came in with his own janky butt tube TV from the early 90s in a cart. He demanded that he test out various antennas that we sold because the last one didn't work. A guy who worked for me and also happened to be a pretty good friend politely and patiently explained to the man that what he needed was a digital converter box. He even took one out of the packaging and set it up for the crazy bastard. This whole while, the butthole with the TV was calling my co-worker an idiot, telling him that he didn't know what he was talking about, and demanding that he set up just the antenna. That's all I need. See, my buddy was being a good sport about it, chuckling a little bit and repeating himself. But when I overheard that freaking mouth breather calling my co-worker an idiot, I flipped crap. I didn't do anything too crazy, but I walked up to the pair of them and kicked the guy out of the store, which I had no real authority to do. It was very satisfying though. I feel that associates should hold the small butthole cacouterie authority. My friend was a kindergarten teacher until she called one of her students a bee after the kid squirted a bunch of glue in her face and then threw glitter. We had an old lady pay for 4 cans of Coke, then grab 5 and try to leave. She then refused to open her handbag and return it because we charged too much, $1.50 per cold can. Now, we're a small business and we regularly lose hundreds of dollars every year to theft of these cans alone. My boss, 6+, firmly takes her by the arm and walks her around the block. Bottle shop next door, $2.20 for a can. Fish and chip shop across the road, $2.50. Cafe next to that, $2.50. News agency next to She never did come back. Much love OP. I had a table of 6, all douchebags. Basically treated me like a douche the whole time. Acted like highly entitled American teenagers. Same sad story. But then, they tried to dine and dash on me. In a former life, I was an all-state linebacker, and I cambered dog like a mother sucker. So, after running a 4.440 in full waiter gear, I catch them in the parking lot. Guy says what? Do something and pushes me, so I boxed his freaking ears. Hard, really hard. As much as I hated this guy, don't do this to people. It freaking dropped him. Anyway, cops get called. He agreed to not press charges for my hurting his ears, in exchange for the restaurant not pressing charges for the 3rd-degree shoplifting, and the cops made him pay the tab. Of course I got stiffed on the tip, but it was still the most awesome violent win of my life. I got fired, but I am still friends with my former manager from this instance. I bet you cured the son of a bee of that little habit. I was working at a canteen at my local football club when some guy bought a hot dog with a $5 note. When I brought him his change, he looked at me and said he gave me a 20. He had done this before at a busier time and I hadn't noticed till after, so I was certain this time. I refused to give him the extra change and he threatened me. I was around 14, and none of the other butthole customers did anything. My manager then made me give him the extra money. Never have I been more POV at work. Frick that crap. Used to work at Starbucks and if the till came up short, I'd have to make up the difference out of my own pocket. Would have laid it into my manager if that happened. I just did my last day at a certain pharmacy chain recently. Well, it happens that my first customer starts my shift out screaming at me about mayo. Now, we always try to order things, but since my store was low budget, the distro center always gave us the shaft on ad items. We couldn't substitute anything for this item either. My hands were tied. I explained all of this to her and told her that a store very close by had the mayo. This set her off. It was my fault. Gas was $5 a gallon. 3.35 really, that I probably PO'd the distro people since I was such an butthole and she wanted to talk to the manager. I was the manager on duty and told her this while still being incredibly courteous about it. At this point she goes, "No frick you, I want to talk to your manager." Again, this was my last day, so the heck with it. I hand her the 1800 number card for customer service and tell her to talk to them. She snatches it out of my hand and goes, "I am gonna get you fired. I am gonna get what I want from this company one way or another." At this point I just lost it and said, "You do that. Go ahead. Maybe they'll tickle your bum a little too if you ask nicely," and walked off. I come back to the counter after I know the woman has left. The cashier that had only been there 3 days was witness to all of this and was in tears laughing. So I had a little Freddy moment too. I worked at an oil field company for about a year and a half. I started off with no experience in the oil field, no experience on operating and fixing heavy machinery, no experience pulling goosenecks through downtown traffic, and also no experience driving 18-wheelers. I moved up very quickly for someone who had no experience. I hounded for a raise and a position upgrade because I had the records to prove I was worth it, and the people I worked with wanting me moved up as well so the position I had could be available. 1 week after my boss told me this position was mine and to enjoy the new salary, benefits, company truck, etc. The boss comes in and calls a meeting. He hired his brother on the spot that day, some 20-year-old kid who smokes that legal crap so much his brain is fried. Also the kid has no experience here, and was introducing him to everyone. 2 weeks after I got my new position, 1 week after the seer hired his brother, the head seer promoted his brother up about 5 levels as far as promotions go. Guess whose job he took? My new job. Please tell me you went ape crap. Was working at a Pizza S and I was 18. Worst day of my life up to that point. Busy bus school day, busy bus Friday night dinner rush. Found out that day parents were getting divorced. All I wanted to do was stay in the corner doing dishes all night and not be bothered. It was fine. I was content. Angry, but content. Finally one of the shift leads who had started the same time as me, but was only promoted the week before, came up and asked me to wash the silverware. I said sure and went off to find the certain tray we used to wash the silverware and find it up front full of clean silverware that the wait staff had not yet wrapped yet. So I said frick it and went back to doing my dishes. About 20 minutes later, shift-led girl comes back and said I thought I told you to wash the silverware. I responded I saw they hadn't wrapped the clean ones yet. She then said the last thing I wanted anyone to say to me. You have to do what I tell you. I'm a manager, I lost it. Frick you, frick this job. I don't need this crap. I've been here over a goddamn fricking year and you don't think I know how to wash goddamn silverware. Frick this. Threw down my shirt and walked out. The entire store heard me. When I got out back, my buddy who had just gotten off the clock and knew I was on my last nerve started cheering after he had realized I was walking out. Best feeling ever. Upvote for Pizza S. Ex-bartender here. Was working an extremely busy Saturday night solo, when I generally have a second guy helping me out on the weekend. Butthole had called in sick after staying out too late. People are coming up to my bar non-stop. We had 2 different ones, and the other one was far less busy with extra bartenders, just because it was the cool one. I'm barely managing to keep up when some guy shoulders his way through the crowd and slaps the bar. I'm in the middle of mixing a drink and ignore him as I work on it, and then he has the balls to snap at me. No, really, this sucker snapped at me. I glared at him from behind the bottle I was pouring from, and he says bro, I need 6 mojitos. 5 minutes ago. Get on it or I'm not leaving you anything. I snapped. Reaching to the side, I grabbed the wet bucket that held the mint and flung it all over him. I followed this by grabbing the bottle of rum and shaking it all over his face while simultaneously spraying him with club soda from the soda gun. I got fired. WHO's a mojito now, B. I had broken my toe and was up all night doing sound for a local promoter and then had to go work at Food World. Some old ancient guy in my line is bitching because it is taking me too long to check him out, even though I'm pretty quick and most of his stuff was canned which I just slide across real fast. Not sure what he was griping at, so one of the cans rolled back as I was trying to go faster so he'd shut up and double scans. He gets mad and throws a can of cabbage, a big can, on the conveyor. It bounces off and lands right on my broken foot. I picked up a cabbage and hit him with it and walked out. I knew I was going to be fired for that, but the crap hurt. I was about 17 or so at the time. I too am a server. I have dozens of similar stories but one in particular sticks out. Super busy Sunday morning breakfast rush. I barely have time to bring people their food, let alone anything else. Father of 2 girls comes in. Girls are about 8 and 10. Father asks me to remove all preset silverware, coffee cups, sugar, salt, pepper, etc. from the table because he doesn't want his kids messing with it and breaking it. I move everything 2 tables over to a vacant table. This guy yells at me, tells me I need to bring it back to the kitchen. Duh. Since when can you not control your 8 and 10-year-olds? If you can't take them out in public and have them not break crap, you've got bigger problems than coffee cups, buddy. I left his butt sit there forever. I put his food ticket in last. I generally made it take as long as humanly possible for this guy to get his food. When I dropped it off at his table, he had the nerve to ask me for silverware and condiments so he could eat. WTF. I worked at a Toys R Us in the past few months. I'm not there anymore. And on a day where I was helping move a bunch of boxes off of one shelf and onto another, a group of drum kits and small electronic pianos, which included moving different price tags around. A woman came in and stood around the section I was in before zeroing in on a drum kit I was kneeling down in front of, having just taken it down from the very top shelf. I had gathered up the price tags in my fist at that point, and so set them down on the box before helping this woman. Kind of a mistake. After asking how she was doing, this woman bent down to the price tags that I had momentarily placed on top of the box I was just carrying, saw the $24.99 price tag designated for the piano kits placed at the very top of the pile, and used her almighty powers of reason and logic to deduce that tag of all tags determined the cost of the 100. I explained to her that that's not how it worked, that the drum kit was actually not the price of a small electronic piano, that the tags weren't even affixed to where they would need to be in order for us to have made a mistake in the first place, and she absolutely lost her crap. She started yelling at me about how when I was younger, I did things competently and knew how to price things right, and how if a price tag is sitting on a product on the floor clearly in the process of being moved around, however loose and unattached it may be, it automatically. I refused to get mad at her, and instead ask her what she would like me to do for her. She says she wants me to hand in my uniform and learn how to deal with people. I ask her to stay still, and I call the store director to come deal with her. When he gets there she starts yelling at him with everything she's got, from "Do you know who I am?" to "I'm going to report you to head office," and he just stands there and smiles and nods serenely. The calmer he was, the madder she got. After repeatedly denying her demands to walk away with the drum kit for free, the lady just gave up and left. Director comes to me and gives me a high five for not blowing up in her face. The place had its problems, hence my quitting, but that was a cool boss moment. It's true, the calmer a person is, especially in customer service, the more irate the other person usually becomes. It's glorious. I had this guy go off on me and call me an idiot because the cafe I worked at was out of half and half. It was a Starbucks-like setting, so I had to just sit there and listen to this butthole. It turns out we had just ran out and the manager was at the local supermarket buying some more. This guy went on for like 5 minutes while the line got longer, so I eventually told to go get his coffee elsewhere, that we weren't interested in his business and that he was being a pain in the butt. I didn't get fired. My manager actually backed me up, but I got a corporate write-up. Blah blah blah. My friend was complaining that I was taking too long to pick him up to go to school because I had to go get gas, which he never gives me money for, even though I take him to and from school. He asked me with a serious face, "Why did you need to get gas?" To which I calmly replied that my car was on E and since it doesn't run off of the power of friendship I had to put gas in it. Then I cussed him out and called his girlfriend a W. Hope you're not a doormat anymore. I don't mind giving the occasional friend a ride, but if it's going to be a long-term thing, they need to pony up for it, especially if they're going to be butthats like that. Working in event planning solidifies how any kind of celebration can bring out the worst in people. But on this particular day, everything seemed to drag on, go wrong. You name it, it happened. It didn't help that I went to bed at 4 AM. Right before my shift was over, I received a phone call from a lady requesting the following Saturday in a crime-laden part of the city. For the record, we have had equipment damage there, plus we take the safety of our employees very seriously. Unfortunately we are sold out for that. All of a sudden she begins screaming at me, "You just don't want to come out here." Well, she was right. I couldn't get a word in edgewise over her yelling, nor could I understand her, and yes, I should have hung up, but I held out hope that I could still salvage the call. So I cut her off and tried sounding as professional as possible to recommend another company until, "You just don't want to deal with blacks, Mom." I explained that the date is sold out. We cannot manufacture equipment we don't have. I have the name of another comp. I'm calling the news on you. I was done. Then freaking do it and I slammed down the phone. I was shaking from the anger. My eyes were bugged out. I remember planting myself in my chair and staring at the phone, secretly daring the bee to call back. I couldn't believe what I had just done. Slamming down the phone is the thing I miss most about non-mobile telephones. As a preschool teacher I had a rather large woman, I'm small, standing over me in my face yelling at me because I told her daughter she wasn't a real princess. She could pretend to be anything. She was making the other girls cry. That is the moment I decided preschoolers' parents are nuts and I'm getting out. Hint, age doesn't make the parents better. Funny you should ask, as I got set off today. I'll try to be brief. A mentally handicapped guy came in today and was somehow ruder than any of the customers we've helped in the past year. Easily. We were both really kind when helping him, but he stayed on the phone through an earpiece while we tried to help him, yelling at the person he was on the phone with every time we tried to answer his questions. He got upset when we couldn't offer him one of our services because of some fine print in a commercial he had seen, and he began to get belligerent with one of my younger co-workers. I turned his attention towards me instead and he tried to pull the same thing. He started going on and on about how we were asking stupid questions and then focused on how stupid we were, using as many irrelevant insults as possible. I took half a dozen of them in stride and gave him my sincerest apologies, but he kept going, being more and more condescending. Being a big guy, 6 feet 4 inches, 280 lbs, I stood up abruptly from my workstation and advanced a few steps towards him. He immediately stepped back and started mumbling about how he wasn't a fighter and didn't want any trouble. I peacefully stood my ground and assured him that there would be no trouble as long as he left right away. I feel absolutely terrible that I had to intimidate someone with special needs, though that female co-worker told me she had felt scared with some of the things he had said, and I wouldn't have tolerated that kind of behavior from anyone, handicapped or not. TLDR. I snapped on a mentally handicapped customer for getting belligerent with me and a younger coworker. As a guy who takes care of mentally handicapped people for a living, I can attest that some Mr. people are the biggest buttholes on the planet, mainly the autistic ones. A lot of people spend so much time feeling bad for them just because they're special needs that it makes the situation worse because they never see any consequences for their actions. It was this Christmas Eve that just passed. Was working a 7-hour shift with another 2 hours of unpaid overtime as well. I work at a pizza place and was on cut. For those who haven't worked at busy pizza places, the cutter never moves from his place. If I lose cut, then the ovens back up and everything goes to crap. I am a good cutter and a lower member of the store's management. We have a 3-tiered oven and all ovens pumping out pizza. Then this middle-aged man comes in. He walks through and past the thick of customers waiting to place or pick up their orders and just stands there staring at me. Now our servers are smart. They will ignore men like him and do their job properly and serve people in order. Thank God we have good staff. Anyhow, he stands there and keeps staring, trying to get my eye contact. It just ticks me right off. Here we are busy as all frick, working Christmas freaking Eve, no public holiday pay, and paid overtime, and this prick is leaning over the counter being an impatient, bitter, lonely old man. I turn around, speaking clearly and loudly over the din, "Hey mate, how can I help you?" And he replies, "What do you think you are, a major in the army?" with his nasty little pommy accent. I am just like, what the frick in my head? He then proceeds to have a go at me, so I just turn around and start cutting pizzas again. After a few orders I stop again, turn around and ask him which name he's waiting for. He says Steve, and I turn around and pick up the order I had just cut with his name on it. He then complains I mutilated it, says I've been rude to him, and asks for someone else to serve him. He also said I am not your mate. I just stop dead, turn around and walk out of the kitchen. I was about to either quit or beat the crap out of this C. In the meantime, with no one on cut so it backs up slightly, I yell for a maker to hop on cut and Marshall runs to the front to cut. He's faster than me but not as neat. So this middle-aged prick stands there and realizes I am actually a good cutter and his pizzas are cut perfectly. I get my head again, walk over and say, "As you can see, things are a little busy, so I am going to have to take his money, give him his change and have a good night mate." I then walk over and pick up a ringing phone and all I hear is, "Man, your pizzas are so crap. Go frick you and your pizzas." Frick you. See, I hang the phone up, walk outside and started laying into the industrial skip bin. Broke my hand. Came inside and finished my shift 8 hours later. TLDR. There went my career as a hand model. When I was like 12 or so, I once shook my glass at a waitress as she was clearing plates. I smiled when she took my glass, but when I got it back full of soda I was confused. I just wanted her to take it with the dishes so she didn't have to make 2 trips. Years later I learned how rude that was and I had one of those "oh god why" moments. I used to work for a cell cable company in face-to-face sales and customer service. Sometimes if someone was signing up for a bunch of services it could take 10-15 minutes. If the network decided to be slow that day it could take 30 or more mins. I understood people's frustration at waiting in line, but it was still a thankless job. One time this lady came while I was working alone and started freaking out after waiting maybe 5 minutes. She caused a huge scene, demanded to speak to the manager, blah blah blah, stomp stomp stomp. Anyone who's ever worked retail knows this routine. I calmly told her to relax and that she would get the same service the people in front of her were getting. When it was her turn, she never relaxed. So she waits probably 25 minutes, gets to the front of the line, says finally and slaps her bill on the counter. She's in the wrong store. I say you can't pay that here. She looks like she's about to explode on me. I explained to her that my company's theme is red and that everything around her is red. The whole store is red, while her company's theme is blue. Everything blue. Any Canadian will know how stupid you would have to be to mix this up. Anyway, she claims that her company directed her to my store's address and wants me to call their customer service to get an explanation. I say I don't think they did and I'm not going to do that. She begins to protest, but then decides to just scurry out instead. I quit eventually. The company didn't treat employees any better than customers treated employees. Getting it at both ends. No thanks. I once had a customer that wouldn't tell me what item he needed several times at a boating store only for him to get pissed at me for not helping him. Under pressure I just held up my hands and yelled, dude, I don't know what the frick you want. You wouldn't tell me so I didn't help you, now get the frick out of my store. He stared at me blankly and said well crap, then left. I hate when people expect to be waited on at every store imaginable. My sister was a waiter at a Chili's for almost 2 years. She had been feeling for a while like it was time to quit. Given how stressed she was all the time, I don't know how anyone can do that job. One Sunday night a group of churchgoers came in from evening services and they sat them in her section. The group told her, at the very beginning of the meal, we just want you to know that we won't be tipping you this evening, because, wait for it, we don't believe in people working on Sundays. My sister was taken aback and, to her credit, for the most part kept her cool. She did reply, well, I wouldn't have to work on Sundays if there weren't so many people coming in after church. She went and told her manager, who stuck up for her and told the family, we at Chili's don't believe in our waitresses working for free and so I will be serving you this evening. She quit shortly afterward. I went off on this woman for putting packages of meat on the floor. Ain't my job to raise you right. During a morning show radio shift, my co-host and I were called up and berated by some angry dude who didn't like the music we were playing. This boiled my blood for no reason. When it was time for the sports report, our sports guy started talking about NASCAR and I cut him off. Man, who cares what those rednecks are doing? It's just left turn after left turn. If it weren't for the fatalities, it wouldn't even be a sport. The tirade went on for way too long and surely pissed a lot of people off. But no one called the studio, probably in fear of getting verbally sodomized on the air. Not one of my greatest moments on the radio. I used to work at a movie theater and was always getting into arguments with people. I don't remember the situation, but I do remember that someone started fussing and I snapped at them. Realizing I might have gone overboard, I apologized. They, however, continued bitching. It was then I decided I'd had enough and said, you know what? I'm actually not sorry, and you need to leave. Sure enough, they left. Another night I was assaulted by a customer. Manager had provoked her. She punched a sign at him and it hit me instead. I was super irritated already and these redneck teenagers came in. They started antagonizing me a little bit until I smarted off at them. The leader called me a dong and then I about lost it internally. Externally, I kept my composure and told him that they needed to leave because I wasn't going to deal with that harassment and if they didn't leave I would get the security guards involved. They left. I have so many more stories like this. Should have just spilled a drink on them. I've done it a few times. I worked at a Chili's for about 3 weeks before I snapped and quit one day after a mom yelled at me for not putting ketchup on her fattest brat's burger. The kid was about 12 and there was a bottle of ketchup literally 3 inches from his fat little hand. He was a little crap the whole time I was taking his order. His mom was a C. His dad was a spineless a shat. I kindly told the kid the ketchup was on the table after he demanded I take the plate back to the kitchen. His mother yelled that I should put it on her son's burger for him and that I wasn't getting a tip yada yada. I just walked off and told someone, I don't even remember who, that I was taking my tips and going. I'm so glad I don't have to deal with children now. We have a regular drive-through customer at my job. He expects us to know his order, so he always orders his name and wife's name special. It's got to be some sort of social and psychological thing with him to make him feel special, since he's the only person who does it. I didn't know what it was, and when I apologized and told him, he freaked the frick out. I don't remember a lot since I fell into this sort of apathetic state, but I do definitely remember the words I don't mean to be in but I'm having a bad day. I have no idea my manager really did this, but I guess he was warned to not do that again or we would refuse service to him. A month later, my co-worker was dealing with him and said she was new, didn't know his order, and asked politely if he could please tell her. He replied with this pained, if I must. About a week after that he was acting as sweet as pie, and after he ordered he told me, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you have a great day? I bit my tongue because I like my job. A swipe. I don't give a crap if you're rich. We aren't your servants. Your useless business coupons aren't going to frost over the fact that you're slimy douchebag. I can't help but wonder if he treats his wife and kids like that. This'll probably get buried, but anyways, working as a cashier in a busy supermarket, served a customer as normal, except while I was scanning he decided to put a 20 on the conveyor belt, which I moved. I hadn't finished scanning and that stuff just goes underneath it. His wife picked up the 20 when I moved it, which I didn't see. Finished scanning. Totals just under $50. Wife hands me a 50, so I give her $3 or so of change. Next thing, the husband is saying, no, I gave you a 20. You've taken my 20. I said no, you paid with a 50. This is your change. He loses his crap at me, saying I've got his 20. There is no way he would say that if he wasn't sure it was true. His wife says she took the 20, but he insists he had two, one of which he had and one that I did. So my supervisors come along, take my till and count it, and it balances. Whole time I'm arguing with this guy, getting angrier and angrier because he is basically accusing me of theft. He repeats the same stuff over and over, and even bets $1,000 that he is right. He finally leaves after my supervisors get his number, promising to check the cameras. Week later, I ask about checking the cameras. This guy did not have two 20s, and I did not ever have one of them. His wife took it. They rang to inform him of this, and he said oh okay, and hung up. No apology, nothing. Luckily I haven't seen him in the store since. Everything. If it weren't for my lack of a degree, I'd have quit in a grand fashion months ago. Working the stock room at a store like Sonoma Williams, Restoration Hardware Pottery Barn, is like working in a crap house. There isn't a single semblance of organization. So it's taken something as small as not being able to find a rug, because our last one was sold a week ago but somehow the database was never updated, which happens thrice weekly, to make me wish I could quit. Tech support for the internet. I was really burned out, but the last call I took was with a guy whose problems were his motherboard batteries. This old guy knew that he needed a new battery. He expected me to write a script so that he wouldn't have to enter date information at startup again. He wasn't going to let me go until I did, and I couldn't hang up on him. 45 minutes into the call, and 30 late for my break, I started into a frick you butthole lecture that over 1,000 callers deserved. Tech support for the internet would definitely burn you out. I worked the redemption counter of a family fun center, Chuck E. Cheese, David Buster's etc., and the little shoots would constantly demand my attention while I was helping another one. It'd have 5 kids screaming they want such and such. It was worse when the parents would start in on it also. I work laser tag now, so I deal with the parents more than the kids in terms of who I talk to more. Some of the adults don't understand how a list works. They sign up last, they get on the bottom of the list, bring in a big group, and at the bottom of the list, sure, I'll let the group of 2 kids in that signed up after you, but only because I can fit them in with the group of 7 and 8 that signed up before you. I have to hold back from punching some of these dumb shoots. The kids at laser tag pee me off so much. They can get their vest on just fine, but when they take them off they just bring them over their heads and drop them because they don't care. $500 pieces of equipment that they just drop. I've got 4 that are having issues. I am not far yet, but I will be soon because I am almost at the level of not giving a frick. I know that feel. I worked at a laser tag joint for nearly 5 years. The horrors. The horrors. I worked at a beach club, in the snack bar, making salads and sandwiches for the people who went there. I was making a sandwich for a lady during the 3-hour-long lunch rush. She asked for tomato, so I casually took 2 tomato slices and put them on her sandwich only to hear her say those slices aren't round enough. I proceeded to pick up 2 handfuls of slices and say find me some round ones. God, I wanted to punch her. My best friend walked out on a job and left me stranded because someone ate his lunch. The thing that pisses me off the most is that it sounds like that little sucker was trained to do what he did. Maybe mommy allows him to do that at home, though not necessarily to her. I can appreciate that much of the tirade you went into was directed at the mom, rather than just at the boy. However, much of what you said probably went right over his head. I work with 3 and 4-year-olds. Trust me when I say that he likely wasn't able to understand much beyond the initial comment that waiters don't like it when you shake your cup at them. Edit. I forgot. Kudos to you for standing up to the little tyrant. I work in restaurants, and a few years back I had this bee of a co-worker who would just attempt to make my life a living heck from the second I walked in the door. We did not see eye to eye, but most days I could tolerate her just fine. One day I was stressed from some issues with my family when a couple of my regulars come in. She had gotten them as I wasn't there when they sat down, and I went to say hi when I came in. They asked me why I hadn't waited on them, and I said, next time you come in, just ask for me and I'll take care of you. We chat for a bit and I walk back into the kitchen feeling pretty good about myself for about 2 seconds until my manager yells in a crappy, sarcastic voice, great idea. Telling someone else's table specifically to request you. I lost my crap. I knew it was that girl and the manager was on her side solely because he didn't want another employee complaint. I yelled down the server aisle, well, you can tell her to go frick herself. The entire server aisle stops and stares at me. The grill line. My buddies who hate this girl about equally and had heard everything bursts out into laughter, and this idiot manager just stares at me. He drops what he's plating in the window and pulls me into the office immediately. I'm sent home with a slap on the wrist, and long story short, it was completely worth it. Kind of serious, but my dad almost dying of an aneurysm made me re-evaluate my life situation last year, and it was a big reason I quit my job. Little upset about letting emotion make that ruling now, though. Haven't been able to land employment since, and living with my parents again. Cool that I get to spend time with my dad after almost losing him. Feeling super guilty and super lame for having to depend on him and my mom for financial support. Never quit the first gig until you've got the next one. I was 18 and working for a large movie theater as a concessionist. This, by far, is the worst position to hold, but all of the newbies start there and attempt to work their way up to better positions. It was a very slow midweek morning shift and I'm the only one working the stands. We had 4 registers and stations for customers to line up. I was clearly standing at my register when this mom and daughter, teen, walk up to the concession stand at an empty register. It's clearly on the opposite end that I am standing. No big deal. I figured they were just looking at the sign with the prices and options. I'm not doing anything else but standing at my freaking register waiting for them to decide what they want. A few moments later, the mom snaps her fingers at me and says hello in the most condescending tone I have ever heard. I walk all the way to end of the stand to her and she begins berating me for making her wait to order. I attempted to explain that I was standing at my register and that I cannot take her order on another empty register. I also explained that it is fairly common for people to browse the sign and then come to me and order once they know what they want, which is what I thought they were doing. She begins to call me an idiot and incompetent and demand to speak to a manager. I call my manager over and then begin to start making her order. She is still waiting for my manager and still standing at the wrong goddamn register when I hand her and her brat their food at the register they were standing at. She then proceeds to curse at me and call me an idiot because you just said you couldn't help us at this register. Serious rage. I then explained to her that I was trying to make her happy by serving her where she stood, all the while having to walk all the way to my own register and back for her. At that point, my manager comes up and starts to talk to her and I can hear her call me a spick and an idiot, all the while her stupid daughter is chiming in too. I was in tears at this point and another man whom I assume saw the whole thing go down, walks right up to my manager and says, "Mom, I saw the whole thing. These idiots came up to an empty register and your employee asked them if they needed help and they ignored her until they realized how stupid they were for standing at the wrong register. They called her names and this poor girl still tried to help them out, the whole time being considerate and sweet. If I were you, I would tell them to sfoo and get out." They looked stunned and my manager told them to take their business elsewhere. Then the guy came up to me and hugged me and told me to never take crap from NEC again, lol. While working at Walgreens, this old, fat woman came to the counter and rudely asked for a pack of cigarettes, so I asked for her just to be a douche and she yelled at me and left and I just sat there freaking smiling. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video.